What's going on, everybody? Today we're going to be talking about how the White Stripes trolled everyone, as well as a little bit of their history. Let's go. The White Stripes are a now legendary rock duo who were formed in 1997 in Detroit, Michigan, made up of Jack and Meg White. They were one of the biggest bands from the mid-2000s, early 90s type thing. And at this point, Jack White has been listed a plethora of times as one of the 100 greatest guitarists of all time. And in my opinion, he's at least one of the best performers. He puts on a great show. 100%. Top 10, in my opinion. He's won 12 Grammys on his own, and the White Stripes together have won countless Grammys as well. Their music has been credited for the garage rock revival, which saw bands like The Killers, Modest Mouse, Franz Ferdinand. They all achieved some pretty big commercial success shortly after grunge died in the late 90s. Garage rock is a sort of lo-fi, DIY, home-recorded thing with very few effects and minimal mixing done. Basically, it sounds like it could have been recorded in a garage, and hence the garage rock term, if you didn't get that. But this video is not going to be about their history. I lied, it actually is. I didn't know it was going to be, but it is. It's definitely about their history, but it's also about the time they trolled everybody pretty majorly. You see, Jack and Meg White were married for a brief period of time. They met while she was working as a waitress at a lounge in Detroit. Jack Gillis, which is an infinitely less cool name than Jack White, would come in and read his poetry during open mic nights. They quickly became friends and began dating shortly after. Jack at the time was playing the drums for a different band known as Goober and the Peas, which is just an awesome band name. I wouldn't mind getting Goober and the Peas tattooed under my eye, to be honest. It's great. Jack and Meg eventually married in 1996, and Jack took Meg's last name, and thus began the Union of the Whites, which sounds kind of icky. Now, eventually, the band Jack was a part of broke up, and he found himself playing for various other local bands, though none were all that serious. According to Jack, Meg would come to practice with some of those other bands and would fool around on the drum kit, learning to play in small increments. That's when it would occur to Jack that, hey, maybe we should make one of the dopest bands of the early 2000s, bro. To which Meg would respond, be like, oh, hell yeah, Jack, that would be hella dope. And then they were, like, immediately successful and rode off into the sun happily ever after. Wrong. While clearly they did go on to have major success, relatively early on in the founding of the project, there was a problem. According to Jack, they didn't want to be seen as another, like, Danny and Marie Osmond type thing, a brother-sister, or a fucking husband-wife type fucking thing. So instead of being husband and wife duo, they would become brother and sister. That's right. In some kind of weird Reddit, like, fantasy fetish thing, they present themselves in public as brother and sister, despite the fact they were married. Now, I even remember when I first heard of them, people told me that they were brother and sister. I thought for a long time that they were brother and sister, and that was probably after they had come out as you know, not being brother and sister. But the rumor persisted, kind of like Marilyn Manson with the ribs thing. Yeah, just kept on persisting. I wouldn't be surprised if there's still people out there who believed that they were brother and sister. But why would you want to claim your wife is your sister? That's kind of fucking weird, dude. I don't know, man. Maybe I'm just not, like, Alabama enough, but to me that's a little odd. My apologies, Alabama. Anyway, they adorned themselves in 3 colors, black, white, and red, the best of all colors. They always wore red, it seemed. I don't know, if you look at a lot of their pictures, they're pretty much always wearing red. All their instruments were red and white with, like, a peppermint swirly thing on it. And they had, like, a really dope, strange aesthetic. Even in hindsight, their album covers and pictures all kind of look like a strange fever dream from Alice in Wonderland. But hey, it worked and it was memorable, because I still remember it today. For years, they won award after award and went on being brother and sister, even after they divorced, and I think 2003 is when they divorced. I know they divorced halfway through the tenure of the band, which I guess makes the brother-sister thing a little less weird, but anyway, the band continued on. Meg remarried, and Jack was the best man at the wedding, so apparently there were no hard feelings. I don't know. It's all a little bit peculiar to me, but hey, if it works, who am I to judge? During their time together, they released 6 albums, each one more and more successful than the last. Their final album was Icky Thump in 2007, and it was around this time that they clarified they weren't actually brother and sister. I guess now that they were divorced, it was just icky and weird to pretend that you're brother and sister with your ex-wife. Ew! All the magic is gone. So they went on hiatus in 2007 after the release of Icky Thump. I remember them canceling their tour to promote it. I was like a kid at the time, but I remember hearing on the radio how they canceled their show in our city because Meg was sick, which I guess wasn't actually true in hindsight. She was just having mental health issues of some sort. She always struggled with anxiety and other stuff like that, and just being in the public eye wasn't really all that good for her. She didn't enjoy it like Jack did. She was not a natural performer like Jack was. So they went on hiatus until 2011. And then in 2011, they officially broke up, and there's probably not going to be a reunion, but maybe. You never know. Things change, especially if well, I don't think they're gonna run out of money because they still got like millions and millions of monthly listeners. So there's really no reason to reunion if they don't want to. I guess they can, but it turns out that Meg is mad at Jack for saying that she didn't support him well enough in his endeavors, and she hasn't talked to him in like a decade now. Now, I'm no Dr. Phil, but I've seen like pretty much everything Jack said, and none of it was really all that bad. I wouldn't be offended if Jack said it about me. So, who knows? Maybe there were bitter feelings after the divorce, and we just didn't really hear about it until now, or who knows? Meg is like a super private person, so it's really hard to tell like what actually was happening. But yeah. Anyway, that's the brief history of the White Stripes and how they trolled everyone with their Reddit-esque fantasy of sibling marriage. On God, for real, no cap. This shit's bussin'. This is another Young Death video.